Sí, yo la escucho.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our panel tonight. Before we get started, we're going to have an introduction from our friends at Tilde as to how to manage the interpreting this afternoon. So, antes de empezar, buenas tardes. Antes de empezar, vamos a tener unas palabras de nuestros amigos.
Good afternoon. We're going to hear from our friends at Tilde to see how we can do the interpretation in this conversation. So I'm going to show the page and Abraham's going to talk. So my name is Abraham Martinez, and if you can see the page in front of you, we're going to have a multilingual space today, and we have interpretation here, and it's available in English and Spanish. And thank you so much for all the participants that you're allowing us to have this space, and so that we can facilitate the interpretation. And so we're going to have interpretation for this event through Zoom. If you're not bilingual, you should choose one of the languages. There's going to be a little globe, and that will allow you to have the interpretation, be able to hear it, and then you are going to choose your language with the checklist.
Hi, my name is Abraham Martinez. I'm one of the interpreters from Tilde, working with Melissa Mirel. The organizers of today's event have made a commitment to creating a multilingual space. To that end, we are having interpretation available into Spanish, English. We ask that all participants speak slowly and loud and clear into their microphones to make interpretation easier. In a few minutes, we will activate interpretation for this event if you are using the Zoom application. If you are not bilingual, you will see this globe icon at the bottom of your screen. To listen to interpretation, click on the globe and select the target language that you wish to listen during this event. If you have any problems doing this, please comment in the chat box. Thank you. Gracias.
I'm just going to start everything off today by thanking everyone for being here that is listening in and watching. I want to especially thank our 4 panelists who were gracious enough to come and spend the evening with us, telling us about experiences they've had in Orange and Chatham County. I then want to finally thank Susan Seahorn, who our public defender for Orange and Chatham Counties, who called me right after George Floyd was murdered and talked about how we have got to start doing more. If it means every month putting on webinars, we have just got to put everything into addressing race in policing and the criminal justice system. It's certainly always been something court stakeholders have known about, and certainly public defenders, of which I used to be. But we don't listen enough. And so we talked about what would be the first step, and it was clear that it had to be listening to the people who are experiencing it firsthand, not just us as lawyers hearing about it and litigating it. So I really appreciate that we were able to put this on, and I'm going to turn it over to Susan at this point and thank everyone again for muting yourself when you're not speaking. And then also after Susan, it'll be Phil Dixon, who kindly agreed to moderate this for us from the School of Government, and very much appreciate him spending the evening with us as well. So thank you. And Susan?
Thank you, Kate. Thank you everyone for attending and for your interest in this subject, because I think it's critically important that we understand what's going on in our own communities. And I also want to thank all of the participants on the committee, in addition to Kate, Lamar Proctor, who is a former ADA and who is presently working as a defense lawyer, Joel Brown, who is a lawyer also, who is presently working in the office of the Elaine Marshall in state government, and Woodrina Baker-Harrell, who is an assistant public defender in my office and who is the senior lawyer in Chatham County, Karen Howard, who is a county commissioner in Chatham County, Alan Wancy, who is a Chapel Hill Council member, Elazar Posada, who is working with Spanish Central and who was speaking at the beginning, Steve Drake, who is a lawyer in Orange County practicing in Hillsborough, who does a lot of domestic work, Elena Dubester, who is a Spanish advocate or Hispanic advocate in Siler City, and Byron Beasley, who is currently in the DA's office as an assistant DA. Thank you all for participating, and I will turn it over to Phil now to start our listening session. Thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, Susan. Again, I'm Phil Dixon. I train defense lawyers primarily at the School of Government. Just a reminder, if you are just coming in, you want to click on the globe at the bottom of your screen and check the appropriate language. The participants, you should be automatically muted, but please try to stay muted if you're not for some reason. This is being recorded, so people can watch it later, so just keep that in mind. Do put any questions that you have in the chat. We do have kind of limited time tonight, but we will try to get to questions to the extent the participants, the panelists are comfortable answering them. We will pose those questions that appear in the chat. Final word to the panelists, just remember you are being recorded and you are being translated. So slow down, speak slowly and clearly if you can. We will, I'll remind you if you're going too fast. And a reminder, we've got about 15 minutes a person. So we'll try to let you finish your story, but we will also remind you when you're getting close on time. I think that is it for preliminary stuff. So let's jump right in. I think we're going to start with Janet. Janet, can you hear me?
Janet, ¿me puedes escuchar? Hi, my name is Janet. When I arrived to this country, I arrived to a different state. I have family there. They are policemen and I respect their work because I've seen how my family suffers when they go out. I saw when they see their parents going to work, their children, and also asking to their family if their moms are going to come back. So that makes me uncomfortable because that's a very respectful career. It's something also very personal. And it's a very difficult career. I have 4 family members that are police members, and I see how they've been fighting because they give their kids so someone can take care of them. Their whole career, I've seen it. When I moved to North Carolina, I did not know how to drive. My husband will always take me to my job because I don't have a driver's license. My current spouse always tell me, you need to learn how to drive because we never know, we might have an emergency. So I learned how to drive. But it's a fear that I have because I don't have a driver's license. For many years I've been here in North Carolina. I was able to find a job relatively quick when I got here, which I was pretty happy because I was able to do so. It was at a restaurant. I would clock in at 5 p.m. and then leave work to 1:30 a.m. I was a cook. And since it was a restaurant bar, I will always see policemen. My wife will always park across the restaurant, and I will leave my work. We didn't have a daughter at that time. She would always drop me off and pick me up. One time she was not able to drop me off, so I decided to drive, and then she told me, drive safely, drive slowly like I've showed you. So I always drive very carefully. I remember I put my turn signal, and then a police car started following me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get a ticket for not having a driver's license. So I was using the turn signals. I got into the parking lot, and they said, if you have a car, park in the back. So that's what I did. I put my turn signals, parked in the back, and the police officer followed me. It was like a private zone. I was driving a speed limit using my turn signals. When I got off the car, the policeman tells me, get on the car. So I thought that was strange. And I said, okay. I got in. I called my boss. I told him I am outside, but there's a police officer who doesn't let me go in. And he says, why? And I asked, I don't know. So my boss comes out and he says, it's all gonna be okay. And I said, no, I feel I'm gonna get a ticket for not having a driver's license. So he said, were you driving at the speed limit? I said, yes. Were you using your turn signal? Yes. So the police officer says that he was going to give me a ticket for not having a driver's license, but I had already given my ID. He says, don't worry about it. Would go in and out, because the cooler was outside, but I would see the police officer there. So I felt pretty bad, because it was the very first time I decided to drive and I got a ticket. I felt very impotent and cried. I cried. The waitress would ask me, what's going on? And I said, I was driving just fine. I got a ticket. My wife cannot come to pick me up for personal reasons. So I decided to drive. So they tell me, calm down. Because I was supposed to get off work at 1:30 a.m. So whenever you leave, I will take you to your house. We'll take your car. And my husband will come also with us. So that kind of calmed me down. So the car was in the back. It was in a private zone. I get in the car. She also gets in the car driving. I don't know if he got upset because I asked him and tell him that I work there and I respect his work. And he was also doing his work. Because my friend, she's American, has a driver's license. She said, don't worry about it. I'll take you home. So she takes me home. We're on our way out, and the police officer starts following us. And I tell her, I think it's the exact same one who gave me a ticket. She says, don't worry about it. Holds my hand. Stay calm. Nothing's gonna happen to you. So in that, she rolls down her window and she says, it's everything okay? So the police officer answers. He uses his flashlights and shines it at me. And my friend tells him, here's a driver's license and the car papers. So the police officer flashes his light and asks for my ID. So my friend asks, why do you ask for her ID? And he's like, no reason. So when the police officer goes to his car to do his work, she's like, is that the same police officer? I said, yes. So I felt pretty bad because I was not able to drive. I felt like I was a delinquent. I know that I cannot drive without a driver's license, but my only fault is to drive so I can continue to help my family. But the police officer continued to follow me to my house. So I told my friend, don't worry about it, I will not drive the car. So I got home, I told my wife I got a ticket for not having a driver's license. She said, were you speeding or anything like that? No, I was driving at the speed limit the way you taught me. So my wife started to work at 8. She would go and drop off her children. She would drop them off, she would drop me off, then she would go to her job. And that was the everyday routine. Unfortunately, she injured her foot and couldn't walk. That happened around 4 years ago. She says, take the car, I cannot drive. I'm just afraid that because of the medicine being too strong, something can happen. And I'm like, I am afraid, I'm afraid. If you're afraid, go drive slowly, stay calm, nothing's gonna happen. So I take the car. My car breaks down. I call my work and I tell them, my car broke down, I have no idea what to do. I said, don't worry about it. I'll send someone to come pick you up. I get off the car, I put a towel, then I started to walk. I was afraid that they were gonna ask me for my driver's license, so they decided to walk. That the person that comes to give me a ride, I get on the car and then I look back to the car and I saw the police was there. And I know that they're doing their job. I respect that, so I went to work. So my boss tells me again, yes, but I'm scared. I'm very sorry, but I'm gonna have to quit. And they asked why. Well, because every time I get the car, I get scared. So I quit my job. I would see that every weekend there was a lot of police officers. My wife would pick me up and drop me off. She would say there's a lot of police seen around here. Yes, they're just doing their job. So I found another job, and she would always drop me off and pick me up. And she gets stopped, and the police officer says, "You see your ID?" My wife pulls out her driver's license, and then they use their flashlight to look at me, and then they ask for my ID too. So then my wife got upset and said, "How come you're asking for her ID? She's not the one driving. I'm the one driving." And then they say, "Okay." He went, checked. We were there for like about an hour and a half. My little one was crying. She got a ticket. I guess she talked back. So I was like, wow, if she's a citizen, has a driver's license, and you're doing your job, she cannot answer back. So many years pass. I also quit that job because it was the exact same thing. I got another job closer to the house, but it's always been like that. For one or another reason, my wife can take me to work or take the car and get pulled over again. I know they're doing their job. And the police officer tells me I stopped here. But they also ask for the papers, driver's license, and I'm like, I don't have that. And they're, where are you coming from? They said, well, I'm going to work. Can you prove this? I said, yes. So I showed the timesheets, the restaurant where I come from, the restaurant, and he says, okay. I also get another ticket. So I feel bad because every time I decide to drive, I always get a ticket. So I just feel bad. So the next day, I took the car, but I drove to a different route. My wife tells me, drive to a different route because there's a lot of police officers during the weekend. And I know that. There's just a lot of policing on the weekend, especially since it's been a month, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I take a different route. And again, I get another ticket, and then I continue, and I cry. I cry when the police officers stop me. They say, papers, driver's license, all the paperwork is in order. So I start crying because I feel hopeless. because I'm like, I just got off work. I'm not doing anything wrong. So they start asking me, one, where are you coming from? One, I know that's your job. Yeah, I feel like I'm a delinquent. I got off work, I wasn't drinking or anything like that. So I go and quit my job again. I tell my wife, what? I feel bad for not having a driver's license. I have right to North Carolina. They have gotten rid of that law where Hispanics can have a driver's license. She says, well, stay calm, maybe one of these days they'll give them again. But I don't drink, I don't smoke, I just want it. So the years passed. Without her order, she would see a police. So she would say, when I grow up, I want to be a police. So I remember about my family, how much they suffered. They're a police officer because it's a respectable job, but it's also a hard job. Yes, I told her we can be a police officer. So to New York, I would see my cousins who are police officers, and she would say, I want to be like them because they're good. And I said, yes, they're good, they do their job. And many years passed, they would always see me drop me off, pick me up. And my daughter would always see me get a ticket. Trying to get pulled over. Get a driver's license. And I'm like, I am not from here. I don't belong to this country. That's why. So she said, when I grow up, I want to drop you off and take you out. And here she says, I will not be a police officer. And I asked why. And she says, because the police officer only pulled you over when you're driving. And I'm like, they're only doing their job. Because there are people that do that type of job because they like it. And I explained the reason why. And also why there's some people who don't have the right to have a driver's license. I found a job that's closer to the house in the morning in the exact same thing. My wife always drops me off from work, takes us off. I don't know. I just wait for her. So that way I don't have to pay tickets, lawyers. Because working just for that, it just makes no sense. So it's always been like this.
I,
I will not lie to you guys that I do drive when there's an emergency. Because my wife will not always drop me off and pick me up. I go to work. But I am so afraid to be pulled over, always looking for my side mirrors. I'm afraid to get pulled over, to get arrested. They have told me that if I see you again driving, I will arrest you. To get arrested with my daughter because she has anxiety, nervousness, and she gets sick. So I explained to my daughter, that's not going to happen. When they get arrested, you're not going to be there. When it's my day off, I do not leave the house. I have to wait for my wife. From work to come pick us up, go to the grocery store, have some sort of gathering. We just wait for my wife. So,
hey, Janet, can I jump in just for a second? I'm sorry to interrupt. We've got about maybe a minute left. The audio is also really rough. We're working on that.
So that's been my life, my fears to get arrested in front of my daughter. I hope that this doesn't happen, and I hope that they will give driver's license to undocumented people. That was my experience in North Carolina. I will be driven. A lot of it is bad luck, which is luck that I get pulled over, tickets. I know the police officers do their job, but I respect them in their career. I cannot say anything else. It's my experience, that's all.
Thank you, Janet. We really appreciate you sharing. That sounds very terrible. And I'm glad we could give you a voice here. I'm sorry to cut you off. Thank you again for sharing. Our next speaker is Marcus Farah. Marcus, are you with us? You ready?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you remember we're being translated, so try to speak slowly. And why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and then tell us the story you wanted to share.
Okay, my name is Marcus Farrow. I'm 50 years old. I'm from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I was born in Chapel Hill, and I've been staying here majority of my life. My father was a police officer until I was at least 10 years old. And my experiences with police were pretty good for the first part of my life. But after becoming a teenager and getting a little later on in my teen years, my experiences start to change with the police. I can remember some of my experiences, just a lot of harassment from the police towards me and my friends from a very early age, just because we were hanging out and they suspected us to be doing things that we weren't doing at times. And just because we were teenagers, Black teenagers, I think they were basically more or less targeting us because uptown in Chapel Hill, you only have a few spots to hang out at, and majority of them are in low-income housing areas. And I'm pretty sure if you're from Chapel Hill and you're Black, you have some kind of family that lives in a low-income housing. So pretty much you have to go to them pretty regularly. And I have a lot of experiences from me trying to go to low-income housing where I've been harassed by police for a number of reasons. One time I was leaving my house to go get me and my wife something to eat, and I came up the back way from a Pritchard extension, and all of a sudden police just came up to me for no odd reason and asked me where I'm coming from. And I'm about 25, 26 years old, and I'm like, I'm a grown man. I can walk anywhere I want. I mean, I'm not doing anything. I haven't broken any laws. What's the problem? You know, and he keeps asking me my name. I said, well, if I haven't done anything, I don't think I need to give you my name. I mean, you know, I'm not doing anything. So I proceeded to walk to I think it was Time Out restaurant. And while I'm proceeding to walk there, he starts to follow me, him and his partner. And they're going slowly behind me and keep just following me for no reason, basically, because I didn't give them my information and they had no reason to get my information from me. So finally, I end up going back to my wife's apartment, and I was driving my mother's car later on that evening. And so the same two police who came up to me earlier that morning came up behind me, blocked my mother's car, and took down the license and all that, and came up to me because they finally found out my name, I guess, and told me I was trespassed from housing. And all of a sudden, I'm not able to go back to where my wife and I live. All of us, because of, I don't know why, because I didn't give them my name. For some odd reason, they wanted to trespass me from that day on. And I haven't been able to go back to any low-income housing with all my family there. My wife was staying there and everything else, just because of those two police that had some, I don't know what it was, but had something against me because I wouldn't give them my name, because I didn't do anything wrong to give them my name. And from then on,
was this a long time ago, Marcus, or was this recent?
This was a while back. I've been trespassed. I haven't been able to go back to housing since 2003.
Wow.
Yes. And so, fortunately, my wife moved out of there But a lot of my family still stays there. I have great aunts and all that kind of stuff that I can't even go to their house. And if I happen to go, I will get trespassed and sent to jail. You know, I've been taken to jail trying to go to their houses. So I don't even try to venture to any low-income housing anymore. And
how has that affected you and your family?
It affected us a lot because, as I said, me and my wife were staying there at that particular time. So that means that I can't go back home because I'm trespassed all of a sudden, you know. And where am I supposed to go to if that's where we moved from Durham back to the housing because her mother stayed there and died. So we was moving back just because that's where she wanted to be. And where was I supposed to go after we moved back from let our apartment go? So unfortunately, I had to keep going back to housing because that's where I stayed. I couldn't just stay on the streets. I mean, that's not what I was accustomed to. And that's where all my clothes, where my son was and my wife was. So, you know, I was going back home. That's what, you know, that's where I was living. I mean, they trespassed me basically for no reason. So I didn't think I did anything wrong, so I wasn't feeling that I was doing anything wrong.
And you weren't charged with a crime, is that right? Not right then when they told you you were trespassed. They just
not for any of that particular stuff. No, not for anything that day. I had been charged probably some months before with another crime, but that had nothing to do with that. You know, I was coming out of there and I wasn't doing anything. Like I said, I was just going to get my wife something to eat. Me and my wife something to eat. And that was basically it. So I was trespassed from there. Excuse me?
I don't want to ask the obvious, I guess, but I mean, how does this shape your attitudes towards law enforcement? I mean, what if you need their help? Are you more inclined, less inclined to call them? What? I
don't really want to call them unless it's a necessity because I don't see them being on my side once they get to my call. Anytime they happen to see me, I've been dealing with them for over, I'm 50, like I say. I went to prison in 1992, my first time. And when I came home, I had a mark on my back that whole time. So I've been dealing with this kind of stuff forever. So
you feel like you still have that mark?
I do. I had to go to psychologists to find out that I was afraid of the police because I thought they were going to kill me. This is how many times they were stopping me. They were harassing me. They would see me anywhere. And, you know, one time I was riding down this road to bring my grandmother something to eat. They were going one way. I was coming another way. The police pulled his car around. He turned around, pulled me over. And I was like, why did you stop me? He put the guns on me and my wife, told me to get out the car. And I was like, why are you doing this? And he said it was because of a cracked windshield. And I'm like, so you can drive one way and I'm going another way and you can tell me you can see a cracked windshield. And this is why you're pulling me and this is why you're putting the guns on me. And all of a sudden now you want to search my car for a cracked windshield. Now, what is this about? You know, and this was happening on a regular where they would stop me, put my handcuffs on me, put me on the ground and put the dogs in my car. And this was like every couple of weeks they would do this whenever they would see me. So there's no way that I could ever feel safe being around the police when you've treated me so bad for so long.
Do you have children, Carl? Marcus, do you have children?
Yes, I have a son. He's now, I think, 27. His name is Marcus Farrell II, Jr. So he's been marked for life in Chapel Hill just because of his name, because once they see his name and they put his name with my name, they feel he's a bad person. So he's been going through a lot of stuff and he moved out of Chapel Hill just for the simple fact that he was being harassed just like I was being harassed as a young Black man, just trying to live and be a member of society in Chapel Hill, where we're from, where we should be able to go out in public and be able to enjoy ourselves just like every other person in Chapel Hill does. But that doesn't happen.
Is this?
And I also have a 4-year-old daughter. Go ahead.
Is this kind of experience something your kids know about, and what, I mean, has it affected them, you think? Because I mean, you said your son.
Yes, my son has been around it a lot. He's every couple times he's been in the car when they've pulled me and got me out and made him put him in handcuffs also. So, you know, and searched the car. And my daughter right now, unfortunately, she's 4 years old, but I don't really go out anymore because I'm with her so much because I'm a full-time dad. And I don't want to go out. I like to do stuff with her, but I don't want her to have to experience anything with the police because they happen to see us and think that we're doing something wrong. Because for some reason, a lot of people think a Black man with a child is something that's so strange. As I walk around with her every day and people look at us like this isn't something that's normal, which to me, this should be a normal thing. Any man should be able to walk around with their child, no matter who they are or what they have done in life. I still think they should be able to go out in society with their child without having to worry about them being affected or me being affected by the police or what they may come up and do to us for no unknown reason.
And we're here tonight to listen to stories from other people in the community, but I'm just wondering your experience. Do you hear these kind of stories from other people in your circle of people?
It's all the time. I mean, and sometimes people aren't doing the right things. That may be true, but not all of us are always doing something wrong. I mean, everybody's not always doing wrong. I can see a group of guys. That doesn't mean we're doing something wrong because it's a group of Black men hanging out. If I was
like
in a white community and there's a bunch of white guys hanging out, I'm pretty sure the police won't go up to them and say anything. But if there's a group of Black guys, we got to be drug dealers. We got to be doing something wrong. It's something that's got to be, somebody's got a gun. It's something that's going wrong in that circle. So they're going to come over to us. Yes.
I think I'm hearing you say it's not only just the extra attention from the police too, right? They get this extra attention, and then there's also this inappropriate response of like sort of flashing guns or taking something that maybe is a legitimate investigation, but responding with far too much.
And with me, as I say, it's way too much every time because I can say I've been stopped probably 15 to 20 times. And out of that, all those times, I've been put in handcuffs. I've been put down on the ground, and they've searched my car. And out of all those times, probably one time they probably found something. That was the first time. But after the first time, they never found anything else in my car, but they've done it over and over and over and over and over again. Just like if they keep doing it, sooner or later, they're going to catch me. But that hadn't happened.
Well, Marcus, I think that's about our time, but thank you so much. I think that's powerful stuff. We appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here and letting me share. I really appreciate it.
So up next, we'll have Janice. Janice, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you want to talk about?
Yes, my name is Janice Harper, and I live in Durham, North Carolina. And I want to talk about my son. His name is Keon Council. My son was involved in an incident in Chapel Hill. His girlfriend lives in Chapel Hill, and he was living there with his girlfriend in Chapel Hill. And my son was involved in a very serious incident where a person was killed. He shot and killed a man. And this was back in 2018. And the situation is a bad situation. I don't want to get in all the details, but because he killed someone and he went to jail in Hillsborough, and he acknowledged that he had done wrong and he was sorry for what he had done. And so what we talked about with his lawyers was a plea deal and not to go to a trial, to do a plea deal, because he admitted he was wrong, what he was with what he was doing, and that he shot and killed someone. So we thought we had a plea deal, and his attorney said that we had a plea deal for 16 years, and that we were going into the hearing with that to see, and he signed off on all the paperwork for that. But in the hearing, it was very, very degrading. It was like he was an animal, a wild, vicious animal. Now, first of all, let me just say this. My son did wrong. He killed someone, and he should serve time for killing someone. However, no, it was like they did not even look at any of the circumstances around the situation. The person called my son a racial slur. And this was at a place where everybody there, they even admitted everybody there was high on something, including my son. And the man called him a racial slur. My son, about 5'1", 5'2", 120 pounds, hit the man. And the man jumped up, I think he was about 5'5", about 200 pounds, ran after him. They had an altercation. The man got the best of him, and my son jumped up and ran again from the man. And the car was parked behind some buildings. His girlfriend was in the car, and she was pregnant. And he ran to his car, and the man ran behind him. He'd already roughed him up and jumped on his car and said he was going to F up his car and start kicking and stomping on top of the car and the windshield on the side where the young girl was. And she was pregnant. And so my son went to the side where the girl was, and up under her seat was a gun, and he pulled out the gun and shot the man. But during the hearing, there was no mention of anything about what the situation was and how it led to the shooting. It was that my son shot this man, and even implied that my son went there to shoot him when the gun was way away in the car up under the seat. And it was said that they gave him a light sentence, considering that he apologized because he knew what he had done was wrong. They gave him 20 years with a maximum of 25, a minimum of 20. And I feel very strongly that they threw the books at him because he's a young Black male, and this was a white man that he shot and killed. And I'm very, very concerned about the criminal justice system and the way that they treat people, particularly minorities. And I'm not justifying what my son did. My son was wrong. But there was never any kind of focus on, after the man beat him up, he ran behind him again. My son got away from him. He ran behind him again and then jumped on his car and stomped and kicked and tried to break the windshield out, which was on the side where the pregnant young girl was. And so it just breaks my heart because I know my son has some disabilities, and he shouldn't have been there, and he shouldn't have been doing what he was doing, and he should serve some time, but I don't believe that what they did was fair. And this does not do anything to rehabilitate him. This is only going to harden him and make, when he does get out, he'll be a hardened criminal, because there is no rehabilitation in the criminal justice system. And my heart just breaks for the family that lost a son, but also for my son, who's lost the majority of his life with no sense of any type of rehabilitation or help for him to make a change, because everybody deserves a second chance. And so I'm very, very, it was the way they talked about him during the hearing. It was the way they, it was the way that they looked at him, and it was like he was just some dirt from under the ground that rose up and got out and walked around in the community. And I know that that's not true, but I do know that he was wrong, and I do know that he needs to serve time for what he did. But the plea agreement, it was like we never even discussed a plea agreement. It was like it was never even brought up. And he gave him a minimum of 20 years and a maximum of 25 years. And then they did so many little things the day of the hearing. When we got there, they told us to go back home because the time had changed and they didn't know when the time was. I live all the way in Durham, but I refused to go back home. It was hot, but I said, I'll just stay here. I'll sit outside until they call back and let us know what time. They had no idea what time it would be, but it just would not be at that 9 o'clock time that they had told us. So I sat out there and waited. 12 minutes later, I get a call. Well, now it's on and it's going to be in 15 minutes. So what if I'd driven all the way back to Durham? I would have been very late for the hearing, but I didn't. I stayed there and waited. So I was able to get in on the hearing. And he told me, he says, they're calling me and telling me that I got to sign some papers and I don't understand what these papers are. I've already signed the plea agreement. What are they doing? I said, I don't know. Why are they asking you to sign? What are you having to sign? And then the phone hung up. So I could not get to him to see what they were doing with him. And I think they did him wrong. Not that he should not serve time. Yes, he should. But I think that they did him wrong because he's young and he was Black. And they were all involved in, you know, marijuana, drinking, alcohol, all of that, and maybe more. And he was part of that too in that area that where he was. And I just feel very, very pained about this whole experience and very negative about the criminal justice system and about how they treated my son.
So can I jump in with a couple questions if you don't mind?
Yes.
Was the victim the same race or different race as your son?
It was a white man.
So different race or different race. I sort of hear your complaint as like the criminal process, the criminal justice process for you was not very transparent. You didn't feel like you understood it. You doesn't sound like your son understood it. You didn't feel like you were kept in the loop. You didn't feel like it was designed to treat you with any fairness.
I don't feel it was designed to treat my son with fairness. And I think that the race of the victim played a major role. A young Black man killed a white man.
And I'm also hearing you say basically that you felt like he was treated in a dehumanizing way in court.
Absolutely,
he was. At just like the next, you know.
Like he was some scrub in the bottom of some barrel somewhere that crawled out of. Yes, definitely that. And I think race played a factor in it, and also bias in the courtroom. Now, I understand that the plea agreement had to be agreed on by the DA, but it was my understanding that she agreed to the 16 years. So why all of a sudden, you know, this happening? And then the judge said that because my son apologized, he gave him the lighter sentence.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it was very easy to understand, at least.
No.
So how does this make you feel about, you know, other instances? I mean, that is a really serious case, if nothing else. We can agree when somebody's killed, you know, that will be treated differently. But what about just your run-of-the-mill experience with the criminal justice system? Or what's your attitude towards police and these DAs and judges and defense attorneys, for that matter?
Well, you know, I don't have a good feeling about it at all because I've had some other experiences. My brother was in college and they came and got him out of his class and handcuffed him and took him to jail. And I went down there and they said that he had robbed something. And I said, no, not my brother. And they said, yes, he did. And I said, no, you got the wrong man. And they said, yes, your brother did this. And so he had to stay there overnight. And we looked into it and realized that there was another student who had the same name but a different social security number that they were looking for, and it was not my brother. And he spent 2 nights in jail till we could get it straightened out. Handcuffed him in class in front of his teachers and his classmates and took him to jail. And he did not commit a crime at all. It was a mistaken identity. And all they just said, well, oh, sorry. You know,
Did they say sorry?
No, they didn't. They did not say sorry. But, you know, I'm saying, oh, sorry, must have made a mistake. But that's the way it, you know, it was just like, so what, you know, get on out and go home. It's just horrible the way I think that minorities are treated, particularly if they think that they are minorities who are poor and uneducated. Now, my son did not graduate from high school, even though he was only 5 credits short. He still didn't graduate. And he was looked at as a criminal, uneducated, poor, and a thug. You know, that's the way he was treated. And I don't feel good about it at all. And I don't have anything good to say about it. I think there was some bias in there. I think that because it was a white man, this man is about 5'5", 200 pounds. This boy was 5'2", 120 pounds. And, you know, no self-defense was even focused on, which with the girl in the car being pregnant, you know that he lost his mind. And then, you know, he has ADHD and impulsivity and hyperactivity all his life. He's had that. And he had medication for it. But after he left school, he said he refused to take it because it drugs him out. So he refused to take it, so he's going to be impulsive. So someone called him a racial slur. He hits the man, knowing he can't beat him, but the racial slur just fried him up. They're all on high. I mean, but no self-defense was even discussed at depth or anything. And it was even said that he went there to kill this man. If you went there to kill a man, why would you leave your gun in the car, up under the seat? I mean, it was horrible, a very horrible experience that left me very bitter and very angry.
Well, you have a couple minutes left, if you like. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Just quickly.
Yes. Where's the rehabilitation in our criminal justice system? How do we eliminate racial bias in our criminal justice system? Do you think if my son had killed a black man, do you think he would have gotten 20 years? With
Do you keep up with him? Do you still talk to your son a lot?
I talk to him every week. I go and visit him, but since COVID-19, they won't let me go visit. So we talk every week, and I check on him. He's a small built fellow, and so this prison life is pretty rough on him. And he had no clue of what he was getting himself in. It didn't resonate with his logical mind because he doesn't think things through.
How old was he?
He was 22 at the time. And
when's he coming home?
Well, they say he has a 20-year minimum sentence. That's what they say. It's 20-year minimum. So I don't know. I know that it's not good for him. And I don't know how to help him. What about restorative justice? What happened to that? Do we even consider that in North Carolina? I mean, what about someone who has a disability, who has been impulsive and hasn't thought through things, and who was defending himself, and then he was thinking about his girlfriend who was pregnant and defending her. And that was never even discussed at length. And we had a plea agreement going in, and I was told the DA had agreed to it. So what happened?
Janice, I don't mean to cut you off, but we probably have time for this one question in the chat. Someone asked, do you think that the prison is doing enough to protect your son from COVID?
No.
That's my sense too, across the board. Well, thank you for sharing, Janice. I think that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have Carlton with us? Did we lose him?
So I just called him. He had somehow dropped off here, and he didn't realize he had, so he's trying to get back on. So
I just promoted him to panelist.
Okay, great. There's Carlton. Carlton, you're muted. If you could take that off, we'll be able to hear you.
I don't know what happened.
Hey, there you are.
Hey. Okay.
Hey, Carlton. I appreciate you joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you give us a quick introduction about yourself and then tell us your story?
Okay, my name is Carlton Chambers. Can everyone hear me fine? Everyone can hear me? If no one can hear me, send me a message. Maybe I'll talk clear. My name is Carlton Chambers, and I'm from Orange County. I'll be 36 this December. I started I started pretty early, around 14 years of age. So I would say I have about 25 years of experience in dealing with the law enforcement in the county. But right now, I'm just gonna give you guys my last experience with the Orange County Police Department. I'm thinking it was sheriffs, the black and white cops, and state troopers all together. So, about 3 years ago, they had a few football games. I don't know if people watch football, but they had a few football games on odd days. Like I think it was like a Saturday. It was a pro football game on a Saturday, or it may have been on a Friday. Well, I went to my cousin's house to watch a game one Saturday night, and I left his house about 11:30. The game wasn't over yet, but I knew it was getting late, so I knew I needed to get home. He lives in Hillsborough. Well, he did at the time. He lived in Hillsborough, and I live in Cedar Grove. When I pulled out of his driveway, I probably traveled about 15 yards from his driveway to the stop sign, and a police car rides by. Now I have a missing light. I had a light out in my truck at the time, so the officer, he turned around on me. He turned around, he got behind me and turned his lights on. In taking responsibility, I knew what he was turning his lights on for. I knew he was pulling me over because of my headlight. And I believe it was mostly the time of night in the neighborhood that I was leaving from, though. That played a factor too. But anyway, I didn't stop right at the moment. I didn't stop then. I went home. And they all knew that I would go home if I was to get into any trouble, or if I was to get into a situation where they were going to pull me over. They know that I'm going to go home first, because I had told them that verbally. So they knew. So basically, I don't stop right away. I don't speed. I don't run stop signs or stop lights and everything. I drive the way I'm supposed to drive, but I drive home to the same address that the vehicle is registered to. On my way home, I'm coming down 86 North, and there's cars behind me, there's cars in front of me, there's cars beside me. It's like all I can see is police cars, and they are riding beside me, and they want me to stop basically, but they're doing a lot of extremes, to the point to where I'm kind of, it's frightening at this moment. I don't want to pull over because I feel safer at home. So that was the decision that I made. But once I get home, I pull in the driveway. And when I pull in the driveway, I stop a little bit because I pull at the edge of the driveway. But then I proceeded to drive to the top of the driveway, which is closer to the house. But by the time I get to the end of the driveway, or the top of the driveway that's by the house, there's at least 2 to 4 police officers in front of the vehicle. They're on the side of the vehicle, and they all have their guns drawn. And I'm actually looking at the barrels of the guns, all of them. And everything is kind of happening, so it's like it's a lot of loud noise in my head at this moment because of what's going on. But I put my hands in the air. I have my hands in the air like this. I can't even reach and put the car in park because they're in front of me and beside me with guns pointed at me. So I know the last thing that I need to do is put this car in park. That's the last thing I need to do. So they keep telling me to get out, and I keep telling them, like, I'm not finna put my hands down. You might want to open the door and get me, because we all know what potentially could happen. And I didn't think nothing no different would happen to me than the worst thing that could happen to me had I to put the car in park or even tried to get out the door. So all of a sudden I hear what sounds to be, it sounded like gunshots to me. But what it was an officer. And I didn't know this until maybe after everything was over, to, you know, I was out of jail and everything, that he was just busting my window out. But being in the car and having my hands up and having all the guns pointed at me, I don't know that these aren't gunshots. So it's like after I hear that, it's like everything went black to me. I don't know if I didn't black out because of drunkenness or anything. I think I thought I was actually being shot at that moment. Maybe my brain was telling me that I was being shot. So neurologically, it was frightening to me. I have to admit. And I'm not going to sit here and play a victim, because I'm a pretty tough guy and I can take a lot of things. But I don't care who you were. And at that moment, you would have been scared. You know what I mean? That would have did something to anyone. That night I was
And you had
charged.
things before, right? But things before led you to that point where you were so scared in the first place to want to go home and not stop on the side of the road. Is that fair?
That's true. That's true. That's true. You know, just to have guns pointed at you without reasoning, you know, that says it itself. You know what I mean? Anytime someone points a gun at you, to me, I feel like it's for one reason, is to shoot. You know, where I come from, that's like what people don't do. You don't pull guns on people without, you know, unless that's what you plan to do. So, you know, when the officers do things like that, I always feel like all they have to do is pull the trigger. It could be a slip one time, and it's over at that point. But that night I was charged with a DUI, which was a point. It was one of the limit, was a 0.9. So I'm sure you guys know what'll put you at, you know, an 8, which isn't much. Not saying that I haven't had previous DWIs, because I have. But this particular night, I just had a few drinks with my cousin while we were watching the game. And basically, I had guns and things pointed at me because, you know, because my headlight was out, because I traveled home instead of pulling over the side of the road. And as I said, it was I came to the same address that my plates were registered to. It's not like I went, you know, to another county, and they knew where I lived. They had to. I've been in this county all my life. They watched me grow up, you know, so you know, they knew. It was just way extreme the way they handled the situation. And given what's going on now around the world, it's those guns, you know. They train for certain things. And in my opinion, when they're finished training, they're looking to use their training every chance they get, even when it's not warranted. So I hope everyone understood that pretty clearly.
Yeah, we had some people comment. Actually,
I apologize.
Your feelings and reactions are so valid. Somebody else said that when you're taught how to use a gun, that is what they teach you. That if you put your feelings are valid. Somebody else said we need to demilitarize the police. They need to stop behaving like they're working in a combat zone. Is that about how you feel?
That's exactly how
they're loaded for war.
Exactly. And if I had before, I would have knew that particular night. They were loaded for war that night. Like I said, no guns, no weapons. I don't even have a history of them finding those things. You know what I mean? So it's not like they thought that's what I was gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
And not to backtrack, but I didn't mention that I had an uncle that came outside while all this was going on. He came outside, And little did I know, they pointed guns at him and put him on the ground too, face first, as if he'd done something wrong.
Well, that takes care of my question about family members then, I guess.
Yep, they did. But I didn't know these things either until afterwards. As soon as they got me, they put me in the car. So it was very excessive, very excessive.
Anything else you want to share with us?
No, that'll be it for today.
That's really powerful stuff, Carlton. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry you went through that. That's terrible.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Anna, that's everybody, right? I think that's everybody. Well, we did have one question I'll just pose to everybody that's still on the call. Has any of your experiences with police changed over the years? I know, perhaps as you're getting older, now you've had some positive experiences, or you have a different kind of interaction, or you've been on the other side of it where and any change at any point. Marcus, Janice, Carlton, Linda. I'll start with you, Carlton.
My audio messed up for a second. I'm listening.
Sure. Has there been a change in your attitude to police?
I'm sorry, Philip. Could you repeat that one more time?
Sorry, I'm getting an unstable message. Has your experience changed any with police over the years?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I haven't really been able to test it out in a bad way. I have come across them in other manners, like maybe and through my work, stuff like that. But I don't run into them in the wrong manner anymore, or well, I guess even being pulled over, it's not wrong. But I haven't placed myself in positions to even run into them in certain ways, if this answering your question. So, not in a bad way, no.
Well, going back to some of the stuff Janice was talking about, what was the court experience like for you? Actually going to court and dealing with the case.
It was one-sided. It's always one-sided. And I now I do have something to add, because you brought it to the surface. Over at least 75% of the things that's on my record are only there because I just agreed to them. Whether it was to get out of to stop going to court, or just to get it over with, or just to hurry up and go to prison from a county jail or something. Half of those things are things that they just put on you in the heat of the moment. They have like foolproof things for them to say, well, he did this just so we can charge him with this. Or there's always something that they can come up with to charge you with, to give everything else validation. Does that make any sense? So when I went to court in this situation, yes, it was one-sided. Everything that I could have been charged with, I was. Eluding and all of these things. There was no, like I said, there was no speeding. I just drove at a normal rate home. The speed limit. I didn't take them on a high-speed chase or anything like that. They wanted it. I can tell they wanted it, but
did you get that headlight fixed?
I got a whole nother vehicle, buddy. A whole nother vehicle.
And more seriously though, in your new vehicle, I mean, do you still have the same concern?
Well, no, actually, because I actually don't have a license, so I don't drive. So I'm working on that now. So that's how far I've gotten since this has happened. I've been taking proper steps to be a better citizen myself. You know what I mean? So So I haven't been driving, but I'm very close to getting my license and things like that to be able to drive validly.
Well, good luck, and I'm glad to hear you making the right steps there, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry again to hear all of these experiences, but I think that's the point of tonight a little bit, is to get you guys' voices out there in the community and share it with other members of the community so we have a better perspective of what it's like. And maybe that leads us to a place where we can think about how to fix it. You know, that wasn't the point of tonight, is to come up with all the solutions. Tonight was really just listening. But I hope that this was a step in the right direction for us, and I hope that we meet again. Susan, Kate, any of the other panelists or any of the other organizers, do y'all have any concluding remarks or anything else you'd like to add?
I do. I would like to thank everybody who has spoken and tell them that we're very interested in hearing these kinds of stories. And to the participants who are watching, if you want to hear more about what happens in your own community, please let us know so that we know whether we need to come up with some more people to talk about their experiences in our local area. Because I think the first thing we want is for people to know what's happening. And then secondly, we want to try to come up with some ways and some ideas to make this not the norm any longer, because it's been the norm for many, many years. And then I think we want to try to put some of those things in practice and to try to come up with ways to make that happen. So if the people who have been watching are interested in hearing more about what's going on in your own communities, please let us know so that we can move forward with some more people to talk about their experiences. Thank you everyone who's been listening for listening, because I think it's a quite important thing.
I will echo a lot of what Susan said. These conversations are immensely important for our community, for elected leaders, for our folks who are empowered. And like mentioned at the beginning, this is a way to share stories. This is a way to talk about what's going on. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're not, we're trying to provide those stories and acknowledge the experience of folks and be able to do that in a way where both people of our community feel safe in sharing their stories, as well as members of the community can hear and think of ways to change that norm, right? We're not gonna get into debate tonight, but hopefully these conversations will spark thoughts and conversations in your own networks of what is a norm and how can that change to ensure that our folks of color can live safely and peacefully in our communities. I thank all the panelists and of course all the organizers, and Phil, take it away.
I think that's it. If there's nothing else, again, like I put in the chat, but thanks everyone that worked on this. Thank you all for attending, and thanks most of all to these panelists for sharing these very personal, difficult, painful stories. I think that takes a lot of courage, and I'm thankful that we were able to hear from you all.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right, well, with that, I think we're adjourned for the evening. So everyone have a good night. We will see you back next time, I hope. And the work this is a good first step. The work will continue.
Thanks, guys.
Thank everyone for coming.
Later.
Thank you.